Another CEO Wisdom podcast. Today with us is Ieva Sibilla Strupule. She is CEO and co-founder at Material Mapper. She has quite the eclectic background, so I think we're going to have lots of fun today. Ieva, can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about Material Mapper?
Thank you, Charles. Wow, eclectic. That's a very good word that I don't think anybody's called me that before. So that's a pretty cool intro. So yeah, my name is Ieva Sibilla. I'm a Latvian-born entrepreneur. I guess at this point you can say serial entrepreneur. I'm just interested in a lot of things. Like I like to explore. I've moved 6 countries and counting, I guess at this point. And currently, I am the CEO and co-founder of materialmapper.com, which is essentially a digital platform to enable circularity in construction.
Interesting. I want to start with the Airbnb of the seas or the Uber of the seas, depending how you view it. Your experience as a chief commercial officer at Antlos. I guess we're gonna talk about the luxury industry, because whose dream is not to sell in the Mediterranean Sea? I have trouble pronouncing that word, but that's the dream, right? So you worked there for 2 years and a half, almost. What did you learn from there?
Yeah, so the yacht platform, we called it the Airbnb of the sea. That was really interesting. That was really cool. I guess that I have to say that the initial idea I had when I met the Italian co-founders for this business was completely different from what it was in reality. When you hear boats and sea and yachting in the Mediterranean and the Caribbean, you kind of think that, this is going to be a part of your lifestyle, which it absolutely wasn't, because once we ended up building the platform, I was enabling other people to have amazing holidays while I was working pretty much 24/7, but I wouldn't call it. It was actually the whole idea of building the platform was pretty much the opposite of luxury holidays. So what we were trying to do with this peer-to-peer platform and a sharing economy model was to introduce sharing economy to the yachting world or the boating world, in order to make it more accessible and more affordable to a wider range of tourists, of travelers who would like to enjoy, the experience of being on a boat. Because up till that point, which was around 2015, the only way how you could get on a boat was basically to go through a yacht charter, and to hire a boat. And then if you don't have the skipper's license, you have to look for the skipper. And then there's a lot of additional or hidden fees, if you will, on the agency part. So then it all adds up. And so what we wanted to achieve with this platform was to connect private boat owners and travelers directly, so that somebody who owns a boat, I don't know, in Greece or Italy or the BVI, for instance, could kind of like make extra money in order to cover the costs of actually owning the boat, because boats depreciate very quickly and there is a lot of maintenance to pay for every single year. So yeah, and in turn we wanted to make it easier for the travelers to actually have an experience on a boat, and the skipper would normally be the owner of the boat. Sometimes the wife would be the chef or masseuse on the boat. So it was kind of like a more human experience that we wanted to provide, and that was very, very interesting. And I think we were like right now, which is a few years in the future since when we started, there's I see a lot more companies trying to do what we did back then, and we were one of the first companies who actually tried to bring the concept of sharing economy to the boating world.
Right. I do think that Airbnb is going to get in that industry one day. The second thought that I had as well was, it's funny how rich people sometimes try to justify their their life quality enhancers as investments. You know, they're like, oh, I'm gonna buy this mansion, and then they end up like, oh yeah, finally let's rent that thing, or let's build a business inside it, and so forth. I think that when you buy something, you need to be clear on your intentions. What happens most of the time is that they buy it on, you know, like a quick thinking or a buying spree kind of, and then they speak with their financial advisors, and their financial advisor like, dude, that was the worst investment ever. And then they feel bad and they try to get an ROI out of it. While the ROI
Yeah.
is generating joy, not really, you know, like
No,
dollar signs.
100%. 100%. I mean, investing in a boat is not an investment. It's a liability.
It
Like
is.
essentially, like you don't even know how expensive it is until you go through the first month or the first year of owning it, right?
Yeah.
So 100%, that's what ends up happening a lot of times. And in the sailing community and the boat community, there's this saying that goes that there's only two happy days in the life of a boat owner: the day they buy it and the day they sell it, because because they realize like how expensive it is,
Yeah.
and oftentimes it's not easy to sell either.
Yeah, same for a jet, you know, like they'll charter the jets and so forth. But the thing is, once you have people renting it, you lose the exclusivity. So there's always a trade-off. You know, I think that's what they need to realize. Let's go with the next experiences that I see here that caught my attention. So you have Paydo in between, but then I think that was the first startup you founded, unpanel.me. Can you tell us a bit more about that one?
Oh yeah, that was not even a startup. I wouldn't call it a startup. That was kind of like a fun project, I would say, that started as a part of an unconference. So it was kind of like, you know, it's like this group community of entrepreneurs. We meet up like at least once a year for this unconference, because we don't want to call it a conference. It's like quite you know, low key, and it's all friends and yeah, acquaintances. And so on panel was kind of like a fun experiment that me and my friend decided to do in order to basically mock fun out of panel discussions, which oftentimes don't make any sense at all. You know, or they're just like, you know, yeah, like, so like we just kind of like, after this few years like of being or traveling the world and being in so many conferences, it just started annoying me to the point where I was like, come on, like what's the value of panel discussions really? So
Yeah.
so yeah, we just kind of decided to make this as a fun experiment, to give every single panel, so we'd pick random people from the crowd, and then give them names and give them occupations. And then so everyone, like a male would be a female and vice versa, and like the most random occupations and jobs, like a horse whisperer, like a president, like whoever it might be. And then we would ask the audience to come up with questions that they would like to ask them. And so it's kind of like it was kind of like a theater experience where, you know, you kind of have to impersonate this new persona that you have been given and answer questions from the point of view that you think this person would have.
Right.
So yeah, and it was really fun. Like it was really, really hilarious actually.
Yeah, improvisation and humor can add so much value to one's life, especially as an entrepreneur, because you get to think quick on your feet. I mean, entrepreneurship is about that, but you do it in a different context, and I think it's super beneficial for the brain. So nice to see that you started that. And yes, like conferences can be quite boring, you know, like yeah, I don't do conferences ever. I did them like 10 years ago, and I never really looked back on them. I forgot to ask you, what did you learn from traveling to so many countries and experimenting different cultures?
Oh, a lot. I think that traveling and actually spend not only traveling, like, you know, it depends what your purpose is. Like, you can travel the world and learn nothing, right? Like, and go and eat at McDonald's every single time.
Right.
But for me, traveling and this is more about discovering new places, and especially moving to new countries and spending, you know, a year plus there. That just like expands your brain so much, like nothing else in the world can do that, I think, like at least for me. You meet new people, you pick up a new language if you're lucky. You learn about a new culture, traditions, everything that comes with it. It's just like it completely expands your brain, and you have a completely different outlook on life that might change the way you viewed people or things or traveling in many different ways. Yeah, it's just a very, very heart and soul enriching experience to go out of your comfort zone and discover new places and see how people live elsewhere.
Right.
So yeah, that to me has always been like super interesting.
I did the the nomading thing for around 3 to 4 years, slow mad and kind of more luxurious travel. But looking back at it nowadays, I I wish and I will actually take a backpack and have very few money in my pockets and just go around the world. I used to make fun of these people, the backpackers, but I do think there's a lot of fun basically like not taking the path that is already there for you and just going out and exploring by foot and seeing a lot of things, because there's a lot of serendipity at play here. And me as a no CD kind of planner that plans everything, I
Mm,
think I kind of missed out on that. Yesterday on a podcast, I think I was telling guests that I just love to drop in the middle of nature, Bear Grill style, and just make my way out of the mountains and so forth. I think that's what I'm into nowadays. And wanted to tell you also on the boat side of things, I also want to have my own boat, and yeah, just
mm,
like travel the world in my boat, with Starlink, of course. Now that we can have decent Wi-Fi in random spots of the world.
mm.
Hopefully, that's a promise. I know that it may not be perfect, but yeah, I want to try this out and see like how
Yeah,
that pans
definitely.
out.
Definitely. I mean, real life starts where your comfort zone ends, right?
Right.
And during the boating times, during the boat startup years, I actually met quite a lot of people who literally just stopped whatever they were doing and decided to buy a boat and do exactly that and
Mm.
travel, from place to place. And that's a lifestyle of many, many people. There's a huge community who do that.
Yeah, looks like fun. Maybe the wave sickness and being stuck in a storm, but the dream is to wake up and have this nice view of an island, and do some
Mm,
snorkeling, spear fishing, and so forth. So, yeah, I'm kind of into that. Let's see how it pans out. Before I get to that, also I want to
mm,
do the van traveling thing. I think that can be cool as well, even for the
mhm,
podcast. To stop in cities and interview physically people and so forth, although like anything physical kind of gives me a headache nowadays. For example, for the podcast, it takes me like 45 minutes just to set up the equipment and so forth. But yeah, I'll get over that. I want to talk about Antler. You've got accepted there. It's a cool accelerator. That's how I would define
mhm.
Antler, some kind of Y Combinator if you want, but more
Yeah.
for the Asia and Europe. I would guess. What was your experience there, and what insights did you get from your acceptance at Antler?
Yeah, that was a really interesting experience. A lot of insights too. So this was after the boat company Antlos was already like acquired. And I came home to start my own NGO essentially as a part of what we haven't mentioned yet, the World Economic Forum Global Shapers, right? And so like yeah, I was just doing the work of my heart and soul, helping teens understand what they want to do in their careers after high school. And during that time, I was approached by Antler to join their very first cohort in Oslo, Norway. So interestingly enough, the founders of Antler, they're actually Norwegian, but they started in Singapore and then moved to, I don't know, 10, 12 other locations before they did it at their hometown, for the sole reason that the Norwegian startup community was very, very like in its infancy. Um, and so, yeah, I got accepted. I moved, again, packed my bags, moved for the sixth time to the sixth country, to Norway, started in the program, which started literally a month before COVID hit the world, like in a big way. So yeah, that was interesting times. It was at first it was all in person, so it was me and like 60 something, 64, 65 other entrepreneurs. Well, not all of them were entrepreneurs or had any entrepreneurial experience. But essentially, I viewed it as a social experiment in some ways, because it's an accelerator, but it's an accelerator for founders. So before you have an idea, before you have any startup that you've already started working on, it's just about the personalities meeting each other, and like kind of, bouncing ideas off each other, and then going through the program and learning and, yeah, networking, building your network. It was really interesting for me, in the sense of learning about the startup community and building a startup and what it takes. I guess like it wasn't that new to me. I had already done that before. But this concept itself, and like connecting with people in such a way where all of you have taken 3 months, well, at least 3 months out of your life, completely blocked it, like left your job, left your country, in many cases, just to like connect with new people that you've never met before in a new country, and try to come up with a new idea that you're passionate about, actually making it real. That was really, really interesting. Like, I had never done such a thing before. I mean, I had been in an accelerator with a boat company, but that was completely different, when you already have a team or the core team of founders in place, versus when you don't even have an idea and you're just meeting random people you've never met in your life. Like, that was really interesting. And yeah, in a new country again, right? And but then COVID hit, and then the entire thing, like the whole program, had to move to a digital format, and I was stuck in my four walls, and just like not knowing what's going on and what's going to happen, like all of us were, I guess. um so yeah, that was really something, because I essentially ended up being alone in four walls, like with my laptop, like trying to figure out what am I going to do now. um but yeah, I mean, luckily enough, the idea of Material Mapper actually was born during this acceleration program. And fast forward 3.5 years, I guess now we're still here.
Quite impressive. The World Economic Forum, how did you get in there? And with all the Twitter trolls talking trash about the program in itself, like what are your opinions nowadays, and the impact that the WEF is actually making nowadays?
Yeah, so I got into it thanks to a group of really cool or energetic, entrepreneurial young people, who somehow were approached by the WEF to create the global shapers in Latvia, in Riga. So I had just freshly come back from London, actually. So that was after the boat startup days. And yeah, I was invited to attend this, well, not seminar, but kind of like a meeting where they were brainstorming about actually starting the Global Shapers chapter in Riga in Latvia. And I already knew about the WEF, obviously, and about Global Shapers before, because I knew some friends in other countries and other cities who were a part of it. So I thought it was really interesting, to give a chance to young, energetic people to do something good for the world, essentially. When it comes to the World Economic Forum, like, I can't speak much about them and their impact. I mean, unfortunately, as it is in large organizations, and I mean, even like very well-known NGOs, like, unfortunately, a lot of time you don't really see like actual change happening, and it's more about talking the talk and less about walking the walk. But I can speak of the Global Shapers that we started here in Latvia, right? So essentially, all we got from the WEF was kind of the program structure, or how it works, or how we should go about it. So they were quite helpful with actually establishing the organization in the first place. But then everything that came out of it in terms of building the NGOs as a part of the organization, that was essentially all our work. volunteer work, and we had to do, I mean, literally everything you do for an NGO, you know, from thinking about the concept to starting bringing it to life, to finding sponsors, finding participants, finding a purpose. So that was all our work entirely, and that was really interesting to me. Like that was really, really great. So I actually ended up doing what I'm super passionate about, which is mentorship, um, and in particular career mentorship for young people.
Right. And last but not least, tell us about Material Mapper. Talking about impact, what do you guys do specifically? Because yeah, I'm seeing like some stats on the website and all the CO2 generated and the waste. It seems like
Mhm.
a cool problem that you're tackling. Tell us what you do exactly.
Yeah, so Material Mapper is essentially a digital data platform for construction material circularity, right? So what we started with was the data side of things because my previous background back in my corporate days was in IT and big data structuring. So, in order to understand a new problem, or well, it's not a new problem, but a new solution that doesn't exist yet, I always want to dig into the details to understand the data, like and gather all the information I can, right? So that's what we started with by building the platform. We wanted to understand what will be demolished, renovated, and built new city by city in Norway within the next 5 to 7 years, right? So we started digging up the data from the government databases, essentially from the municipality databases, where you have to go to receive the permit for either demolishing, renovating, or building something new. So we started by digging into this massive pool of big data, which was quite unstructured and quite messy, I have to say. And we figured out a way to automate the process of basically getting the information that we need out of those databases and into our platform. So we could tell you, you know, with the precision, what's going to happen where in the next, 5 to 7 years. So then on top of that, again, looking at the data, we started building algorithms to understand the big quantities of materials that will result from every single construction case, like from every single building, so that you know you would have at least some sort of idea, like how many tons of concrete, plaster, even asbestos, you know, wood, iron is going to come out of every building when it's either renovated or demolished, or you know there's also always leftovers when you've finished a new building. So yeah, we did that, and then on top of that we started building a marketplace where you can buy and sell the materials and aggregates or masses. Then we started adding on the CO2 emission estimates as well. So like what would be the savings in terms of CO2 if you were to reuse an X amount of an existing material versus using a newly produced virgin material, right? So yeah, that's basically what it is, and it serves the purpose of basically yeah, not tossing out materials that are perfectly good to use them again. We don't go into the details. Well, we have partners that deal with the logistic and storage side of things, but essentially we're kind of a platform that solves the 0 to 1 part, or like the beginning phase of project planning and city planning even, where before you've even started a project, you know what's going to happen in the same area at the same time, and you can already claim or pre-claim the materials before you've started the project.
Love it. And where can people find out more about you, Ieva, and about Material Mapper?
About me, I guess LinkedIn or my own personal website, which is sibillastrupule.com. Material Mapper is at materialmapper.com. Yeah, or just reach out to me directly and I'll be happy to chat.
All right. Thank you so